description of the saga.
Sure,
But
sure.
I think it would be great for the audience to hear.
I spent 15 years working for the CIA, the second half of my career in counterterrorism operations. I was the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations in Pakistan after September 11th. I left the CIA in 2004 and ended up finally at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where I was the senior investigator and intelligence advisor to the then chairman, Senator John Kerry. But in 2007, I went on ABC News and I gave an interview to Brian Ross, and I said three things. I said the CIA is torturing its prisoners. I said that torture is official U.S. government policy. And I said that that policy was signed and approved by the president himself. Within 24 hours, the FBI began investigating me. And I'll add also, I've been audited by the IRS every single year since I gave that interview. The FBI investigated me for 4 years. And I think they did this on purpose. I think they waited until I left Senator Kerry's staff. And they finally charged me with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage. I didn't know at the time that our justice system is such that you're not going to be found not guilty. If you are innocent, you're still going to take a plea. In fact, ProPublica has found that 98.8% of all cases in federal court result in guilty pleas. Why? Because the government has an unlimited budget to ruin your life, and they will harass you, and they will prosecute you and persecute you until you finally throw up your hands and say, I give up. I gave my attorneys everything I had, and I still owe them $880,000. I'll never pay it. The government's ruined me. I lost my federal pension. I sold all my personal possessions. My wife was a CIA officer. She was fired the day that I was arrested only because she was married to me. And so we ended up, we were sitting at our kitchen table one night. This was about 3 months after my arrest. And she said to me, I'm not sure how we're going to buy food this week. And I said, are we in that bad shape already? And she said, yeah. And the next morning we went to the welfare office and we qualified for everything. Food stamps, Medicaid, cash payment. She was a nursing mother at the time, so we got free baby food, for example. But this is what the Justice Department wants to do to you. They want to ruin you financially. They want to separate you from family and friends and from people who would be your natural allies and your natural supporters. And when they finally isolate you and make you feel completely helpless, plus you owe your attorneys $1 million, you're going to give up just to make the whole thing go away. So I was looking at 45 years in prison. And the Justice Department said, take a plea or you're going to die in prison. And I said, I'm not taking a plea. So I fought them until the very end. And interestingly enough, they kept working their way down with each plea offer. They offered me 10 years. Fall on your sword, they said. Take 10 years to an espionage charge, and we're done right now. I said, never. I'm not doing 10 days, I said. And then just 2 days later, they came back and said, do 8 years on an espionage charge. I said, no way. And then that was a Monday and a Wednesday, and on Friday they said, okay, do 5 years. So I said to my attorney, well, actually, it was a conversation with Jesselyn Radak. I said, it was always my understanding that they would come back and say, take 5, take 7, take 10, instead of 10, 8, 5. And she said, her exact words, they have a shit case and they know they do. So I held out, and we didn't hear anything for another 6 months. And then they said, take 3.5. And I said, no way. And we got down to 2.5. And my criminal defense attorney said, okay, so here's how it's going to play out. If you say no, we go to trial. Trial's going to cost you another $2 to $3 million. If you lose, you're going to do 12 to 18, probably 18. if you take a plea, we can get you 2.5. So again, my wife and I sat at the dining room table, and whether or not I had committed a criminal act is irrelevant. In this case, Tom will tell you the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. It makes no difference. You have to cut your losses. So we actually sat with a calculator to figure out, okay, how long can my family remain intact if I go to prison? And we figured we could survive 2 years. So my attorneys were able to negotiate a guilty plea on a reduced charge. All of the espionage charges were dismissed. And I took a plea to violating the Intelligence Identities Protection Act of 1981. I'm only the second person in American history that's been charged with that crime. In fact, the author of the law volunteered to testify on my behalf as an expert witness. Yeah, the Justice Department didn't care. So I took the plea, 2.5 years. The government took my pension, so there went another $800,000 up in smoke. And I went to prison February 28th, 2013. I got out of prison February 3rd of this year, having done 23 months of a 30-month sentence. But as Tom said, and I'm going to echo this, there's a silver lining to this. Number one, you really get to know who your friends are. There's no question about that. There's no gray area here. I'm proud to say that I can count the number of people who walked away from me on one hand, and every single one of them had something to do with the CIA's torture program. So, no loss. The money is just money. I'm 51. I probably have another 20 or 25 years left in me to work. I'm only making minimum wage right now. I work at a think tank in Washington. They've been very generous with me, very, very generous, and they're lovely people, but they can't afford to pay me anything. So I'm trying to supplement that with speeches and teaching and writing books and things like that. So I'm optimistic that in the long run things will turn around. But the bottom line is, I know in my heart I did the right thing. I don't have any. I've never doubted myself. I've never questioned that. In 2002, I returned from Pakistan. I had led a raid which resulted in the capture of Abu Zubaydah, who we thought at the time was the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. And we also captured 51 other Al-Qaeda fighters that night. And when I got back to headquarters, one of the leaders of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center approached me, very informally, it was in the cafeteria, and said, listen, I wanted to ask if you wanted to be certified in the use of enhanced interrogation techniques. I said, what's that mean? And he said, well, we're going to start getting rough with these guys. I said, I'm not sure I'm following you. He said, well, here's what we're going to do. And he laid out the torture program for me. And I said, man, that sounds like torture. I don't think I want to be involved in torture. I said, I have a moral problem with it. I just don't think this is for me. And then just to make sure I wasn't, insane, I sought out the counsel of a very senior CIA officer with whom I had always had a friendly relationship. He later denied that this conversation ever took place. But what he told me was, look, first, let's call it what it is. It's torture. They can call them enhanced interrogation techniques or whatever they want. It's torture. Number 2, torture is a slippery slope, and somebody's going to kill a prisoner. Once that happens, there's going to be a congressional investigation, and then there's going to be a criminal investigation, and somebody's going to go to prison. Do you want to go to prison? Ironically, I'm the only one who did go to prison. But I said, no, I don't want to go to prison. So I went back to CTC, the Counterterrorism Center, and I said, I'm not interested. I was the only person that they approached. There were 14 of us. I was the only one who turned it down. But that was the right decision in 2002, and it was the right decision in 2012, and still in 2015, after 2 years in prison, and not in a minimum security camp. My punishment for making them wait for 10 months to take a plea was that I went to the actual prison with the guard towers and the concertina wire and everything. There was no minimum security camp for me. But even with all that, I know that I made the right decision, and I don't have any regrets at all.